What's the biggest problem that the Democrats have with this plan? Is it just the amount or the size of the federal government's payments?
It's both. Essentially, the president had talked about a $1 trillion infrastructure plan, which some people thought would mean $1 trillion in federal spending. But what the administration is going to roll out is a plan that starts with at least $200 billion in federal dollars over 10 years. And the idea is, instead of having local and state governments relying on federal funding for their projects, they want to encourage states and localities to come up with their own dedicated revenue streams. So the federal money will be used mostly as incentives to get other non-federal spending. And what the Democrats are saying is, U.S. needs are just too great, and states and localities are already spending enough of their own money. What they need is a more reliable federal partner. So they're going to be calling for a lot more federal investment to fix America's broken and dilapidated roads, bridges, and other public works.
So, Mark, is anybody on either side of the aisle talking about increasing the gas tax, fitting it into that trust fund that we have so they could pay for some of this infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a big question. How do we pay for all this? We saw the U.S. Chamber of Commerce last week come out with a plan that would raise the federal gas tax by 25 cents a gallon over 5 years. We haven't seen an increase in federal fuel taxes since 1993. Other groups have talked about doing it as well. And the White House hasn't endorsed that idea, but hasn't opposed it either, sort of leaving the door open. But the White House is taking sort of a strategic approach here where they're not going to include any kind of revenue, new revenue, in its infrastructure plan. The thinking by the White House is, we'll be sort of neutral on funding, and we'll have that debate with Congress and negotiate some of those details with lawmakers when the legislation is drafted.
Okay, so if it's not a bipartisan deal, could Congress just pass it on party lines again with another budget reconciliation?
I'm told it's technically possible to do that. There's sort of a convoluted way they could do like what's called budget reconciliation, but politically very unlikely. I think the expectation is, this will take 60 votes in the Senate. Democratic votes will be needed, which is why we're hearing the White House say that as part of the State of the Union address tomorrow, the president's going to make sort of an overt appeal to Democrats saying, infrastructure has always been bipartisan. This is something we need Democrats to do. Let's work together to fix our infrastructure.